Welcome to guys to this tutorial, and in this episode we're going to be talking about working with recycler views in Android. Okay, if you're just joining us, you probably want to look at the previous video where we talked about scroll views and recycler view. Just to recap, we said recycler view is a more advanced version of the list view that helps you display large amount of data by reusing existing views rather than just creating views as you go. Okay, so the components of the recycler view is basically encompasses six different components. The first is the data, which can be text, images, icons, or what have you. The second component of the recycler view is the recycler view itself, which is a widget in Android development as a scrollable list that contains a list of data. The third is a layout for a single item that you want to be in the list. That's one item of the list. You have to design the layout. The fourth member of the recycler view is the layout manager. The layout manager basically organizes the UI components of the view, and every view group in Android development, that's linear layout, relative layout, constraint layout, they all have a layout manager. But using the recycler view, you have to explicitly declare the layout manager. Layout manager is basically what describes the view, that says if the view is going to be horizontal, vertical, or grid-like. Okay, the fifth member of the recycler view is the adapter. What an adapter does is it connects two components that are naturally incompatible. For instance, you're connecting your data with your view. So the adapter stands as an intermediary to connect both parties. So it prepares your data on how it will be prepared in your view holder. We'll be talking about view holder next. And also, when your data changes, your adapter is responsible for updating the contents of the view. Okay, so the final component of the recycler view is the view holder. The view holder is basically what contains the view information for displaying one item from the items layout. So the view holder is what is responsible for displaying data of one item. So the view holder basically works hand in hand with the adapter to display data in your recycler view. Okay, so to recap, we have six components: data, recycler view, one items layout, layout manager, adapter, and view holder. So this is basically a schematic for how the recycler view operates as a whole. Over here we have the activity, general activity that contains everything on your screen. That's your whole Android screen. And under your activity we have the recycler view. So let's come over to the left hand side. The most basic component of the recycler view is the data. It can be string, can be images, can be strings and images at the same time. But for this case, let's just select the string as our data. So the item layout is what describes is a design of one layout item, how you want the data to be displayed on the screen. For one item, you have to design the layout. In our case, we're using a string, so let's say this layout is just a text view that displays text with padding around the text. So this is what it look like. All right. So our view holder, on the other hand, uses this data to display draws this data to be displayed on our activity. To do that, it uses the adapter. So the adapter is the intermediary between the data and the view holder. Now, the recycler views layout manager. Remember we said layout manager manages the organization of the UI components of the view. So it's what describes the view, whether it's going to be horizontal, vertical, or grid. So the layout manager is basically, in our case here, obviously, is described as horizontal or as vertically. So our data is going to be displayed vertically, just like we will have in a vertical linear layout. So the layout manager describes the view, and the view holder displays the data for one item, one list item. So if we have another data here, as we display here data to another string, our view holder again will be created. Another instance of the view holder will be created to display this second data with the help of the adapter. As you can see here, the view holder displays data too. At the same time, the view holder, with the help of the layout manager has described this data as vertical, to be displayed vertically. So the organization of the recycler view is vertical. That means our second data is going to be directly stacked below our first data. And this is how the recycler view works basically. So moving over to Android Studio. Yes, continuing from where we stopped in our last episode, where we are designing a news application. Let's go over to the layout. Uh, yes. So first thing I'm going to do, I just want to take out all of these comments. Make our code look better. Okay, I'm going to take out. No, let's leave this activity. Remember, this is our main activity where we have. Okay, let me just go ahead and run the app on my emulator. Okay, cool. Okay, this is our activity where we're displaying one article using the scroll view. So I want to create another activity. There are several ways you can go about. You can either create the files locally, but I'm just going to use an empty activity. Yes, let's call that headlines activity. See, we have a page displaying a list of headlines. So just going to go with the default settings here. My Android Studio is slow today. Okay, while that loads, let's go back to our slide here. Implementing a recycler view. So to implement a recycler view in Android Studio using Java, there are basically 6 steps you have to follow. The first step is to add the recycler view dependency to the app's app build.gradle file. And the second step is to add the recycler view to the activities layout. Well, that's what you will do naturally, but then Android Studio makes it easier. The build.gradle file can be found under the Gradle script here. It's basically a configuration file for Gradle that describes your application and dependencies that you will be using in your application. So what's one of the requirements is to add the recycler views dependency here. But instead of doing that and having errors, there's an easier way. Yes, switching over to the design view of my layout, can find the recycler view under common or then think under containers. You would notice this download icon here. It's basically telling me that the recycler view has not been added to this project. That's adding the dependency to my view.gradle file. But what I want to do is just drag and drop. Yes, we have an error telling us requires the library to be added. Would you like to add this now? Yes. So we've done step 1 and 2 at the same time. We have adding components here. Just going to let that load. Still adding components. Very slow. Well, let's go back to our slides. The next step is to create a layout XML file for one item. So let's go back here. So we've added RecyclerView to our project, and also what we're going to do next is to design the layout for one item in the list. Going back to Android Studio. Wow, still adding components. I think we can move ahead. So to add a layout, just going to come to layout and right click, go to new layout resource file. Yes, we're going to call it headline item. The root element here is linear layout, but I want a text view since we are displaying only text. Let's see if that works. And we are going to leave it in the layout directory. Okay, click OK. We have that ready. So basically it's a text view, regular text view. Can take this out. I like to have my code like this. Just makes it easier to read. For now, let's put simple text just for representation. Let's have tests. Recycler. Okay, so because also set the alignment. Oops, center. Yes. So this is our layout design for one item, a single item. In depending on what you are trying to achieve, you might decide to add an image view. If you want to have an image view, maybe you want to display the headlines with an icon. We're going to have probably a linear layout or another kind of view group, and then have its children as the. We're going to have the text view and image view as its children. Then design it, drop the text view, the image view probably to the left, and then have the text to the right of the image view. So there's really no limit to what you can do. You have a lot of options when designing your layout item. Okay, so I think we're done with adding the RecyclerView components. If we go back to the view.gradle, you're going to see an implementation of RecyclerView. Cool. Yes, let's go back to our slide to see what we have to do next. Step 4 is to extend RecyclerView adapter and implement onCreateViewHolder and onBindViewHolder methods. So this is where it gets interesting. Now we have tasks of creating the adapter for our RecyclerView. You can do that directly in this same file, headlines activity, by creating another class after below the headlines activity class, but it is advisable to have that in a separate file so your code looks more neater. So I'm just going to create a new Java file. Let's leave it at that. And let's call it headlines adapter. Let's develop that. We'll do that. And go to okay. All right. So I want to show you an easy way in case whenever you're having problems and you're trying to figure out how a particular tool in Android development works. You can always visit the documentation for Android development by Google. You can find it at developer.android.com, or if it's too hard, going to show you how to easily find documentation. So I easily search, you can easily search RecyclerView, then Android, or ListView Android, or whatever you're looking for. I think this is more efficient than giving you the link. So when you need to find out the documentation for other things, you can easily get that out by yourself. Yes, and you see the first item here, the first search result is create a list with RecyclerView. When you click that, you're going to have this page open. And it's basically describing the RecyclerView and how to implement it. So here we have an overview, and they have described most of the components of the Android of the RecyclerView, like the view holder, the layout manager. You can go through that if you have time. And then the implementation, you have to add the support library. We've done that. add recycler view. We've done that. Okay, so from our slides here, we are currently at step 4, which is to extend the recycler view adapter. Then follow me to step 6, where we have in your activity in the onCreate method, create a recycler view, initialize it to your adapter. Let's go over there. So back here, we have this section where they talk about the object connected to the layout and that. So this is their activity. As you can see here, this is the onCreate method. Then we have these 2 lines of code that comes with every activity that we create. So copy this code, Ctrl C, and then back to our Android Studio. Let's do that in our headlines activity under these 2 lines of code. Drop. Yes. So I'm going to be going over these lines of code one after the other. Then, as you can see, we have a lot of errors. So we're going to be solving those problems together. The recycler view is basically, okay, we have variables here that we have not defined. Let's go back to, yes, you can see these variables that is defined at the top here. And come over here. If you don't understand what variables are, we have a video. There's a video on that, variables and how to define variables in Java. I suggest you look at that. Okay, so we have 3 private variables here: a recycler view adapter, and then recycler view layout manager. Okay, so we're assigning the recycler view to our recycler view that we have in our activity headlines here. Let's look for the ID. Okay, we don't have an ID for that here, so just going to add ID, my recycler view. Oops, if you're adding an ID for the first time for any view, you have to include the @id. Yes. And then that's also, we have this recycler view inside the constraint layout, and then we are missing our vertical constraints. Can add that in text. Okay, let's add that in text. Constraints top to top of parents. Also, if you don't understand constraints and vgroup, we also have a video on that. I suggest you take a look at that. Yes, back to our headlines activity, you will notice that this code that was previously in red is now properly displayed. What that means is that Android Studio can now find that view. So what we're doing here is we're assigning this variable to this view using the find view by ID method. We are looking for our recycler view here and assigning it to this variable so that we can use it in code. We also have another error here, and once I click Alt Enter, can find these quick fixes here. What I want to do is import class so that we have Android recycler view as part of our imports. You can see that here. and we can use all of the classes. Another thing you see is casting find by is redundant. That is because we don't necessarily need this part of this code. You can just write recycler view equals to find view by ID, and that will work also. All right, this next line of code here is totally optional. As you can see from the comments here, it's just to improve performance when the content of the layout doesn't change in size. So we can just leave that. The next section here uses a linear layout manager. So this is what actually introduces this line of code actually introduces the layout manager. And as you notice here also, we have declared a variable named layout manager, and is of type RecyclerView.layout manager. Similar to what we did in line 18 here, we're just going to assign this variable to a linear layout manager. You can do that by creating an instance of a linear layout manager using the new keyword and then linear layout manager. We have an error here, so I'm going to press Alt plus Enter and import the class just as I did for the code. That is also there. Now we want to set this layout manager. We declared the layout manager. Now we have an instance. We called an instance of the manager and assigned it to this variable, but we haven't set this layout manager that we have as our layout manager for the recycler view. So that's what line 27 here is taking care of. We have recycler view, which is our variable for our recycler view. Remember, we looked for our recycler view that we have defined in our layout, assigned it to this variable. So now we are calling this variable and setting a layout manager as our layout manager. I hope that makes sense. Finally, what we do is we specify an adapter. Remember, an adapter is our connector between the data and the view. So likewise, we also defined the adapter variable here, and is of type RecyclerView.adapter. The same way, we're creating a new instance of my adapter and then setting our RecyclerView adapter to this variable that we created. Cool. You see, we also have an error here, but let's also hit Alt plus Enter and see what happens. See, create class my adapter and create inner class my adapter. So that is not it's not a kind of problem we had with our linear layout manager or our recycler view. This is because the linear layout manager is an inbuilt class with Android, so we could import that into our code. But this my adapter is not an inbuilt class. So what we want to do is change this my adapter to the actual name of our adapter, and that is headline adapter. And we're supposed to set this to our data source. In practice, this is going to be probably you're going to be collecting data from a database or from an online source and then displaying. But here I just created a sample data source. Go over to my strings. You can see I've added this same sample data as a string array. Okay, so we have to declare the variable. Let's declare that variable as a string array. My data set. So we are going to assign this variable to our string that we resource get string array, and then array resource dot have to get the name of our string value. Okay, so it's sports underscore info. So we have to find that in code here. Yes, and using this get resource method and get string array method, we can find our string resource and then assign it to this my dataset variable that we just created. If you're having problems creating variables, and if you also have problem with arrays, there are videos you can watch to help you with that. All right, moving on to our, we have an error here. Let's look. Okay, let's move over to our headlines adapter. Going back to the documentation here, see, the next step after that is to add a list adapter, which is also our step 4 and step 5. You will see how we do that in a minute. Yes. So I'm just going to copy all of this, and then drop it here. Let's go over to the top. You see this public class. Okay, so this is how our class should be declared. Public class headlines adapter extends RecyclerView.adapter. Angle brackets my adapter. Okay, headlines adapter dot my view holder. Cool. So IntelliSense here is telling us that the class must either be declared as abstract or implement abstracts method. So let's just go over and press Alt plus Enter and implement methods. So we have these 3 methods here that must be implemented by our headlines adapter. So click OK. Now we have all of that, and you notice our adapter now looks a little bit like what we have there. So instead of just copying and pasting, let's do this so that you can understand it better. Yes. So the first thing I want to do is create private variable of data type string array. Call it m dataset. So we can take this out, done this part. Now from this pseudocode here, we We have a list of tasks to carry out next. Provide a reference to the views for each data item. Complex data items may need more than one view per item, and you provide access to all the views for a data item in a view holder. So what we're trying to do is basically provide a reference to the views. That is just it. And in our case, we have a single text view. I'm just going to copy this, Control X, sorry, cut, and then drop it here. So now we've created a view holder class. Now step 5 from here, if you remember, create a view holder. Yes. And in this view holder, we're providing a reference to the view. We're using a text view. Our layout is basically a text view, so that is why we are using a text view in this case. We also have to import the text view class. Now return text view. Okay. Another thing, you have to provide a constructor for your adapter. What the constructor is basically a constructor is like the name describes, a constructor. It describes how your class is going to be used. You have errors, but let's just leave that for now. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do all of this. We have this implemented. Combine view holder. All right. Now let's go ahead and handle all of the errors. Still have my adapter here. We're supposed to have headlines adapter. Okay. Well, this is not supposed to be here. Down here. Okay. I also want to change this to headlines adapter. Take out this ellipsis. Okay, so I think what's left is to import these classes. Again, Alt plus Enter, and here we have my text view. I want to change that to headline item. So with that, our adapter is ready to go. Take out this. All right. So going over this from step 4 and step 5, the basic necessity, what we're doing basically in this class is creating the adapter which extends RecyclerView.adapter, and 2, creating the view holder which extends RecyclerView.viewHolder. Every other thing here is as a result of these two requirements. First off, we have to create a constructor for the adapter class. Most classes come with what we have, what we call a constructor. As I explained, constructor basically describes how the class will be used. So we pass in variables to define how kind of arguments the class will take in. So we have a constructor here for the adapter class and another constructor inside the viewholder class. So we have constructor here for the adapter and then constructor here for the viewholder. Cool. Another thing you might want to take note of is the fact that we had to implement these three methods: on create viewholder, on bind viewholder, and get item count. They are a necessity if you're going to be using this abstract class without explicitly mentioning the abstract keyword. Okay, so in the onCreateViewHolder class, basically created a new view and then created an instance of the viewholder class, assigning it to that view. On the other hand, in the onBindViewHolder class, what we did was to create an instance of the view holder and then set data, the particular data that is required for that position. So say we are at the third position. This method here tags the data source for the particular data that is at that third position and sets its value to the view holder. Finally, the getItemCount method simply returns the length of the data set. And what this means is basically telling the system the size of the data. Okay, so now we can go ahead to test this out. Come back to our headlines activity. You notice that we are good to go here, and then in our headlines adapter we are good to go also. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. I don't have my emulator running right now, but it shouldn't take too long. Everything seems fine. You can to your log cards if you're expecting errors. Okay, so our emulator is running, and then you've noticed we're still having this activity over here. Uh, there's one little bit of information we overlooked. Let's go over to our application manifest. Find the Android manifest.xml in manifest folder, and this contains basic description of your application. As the name suggests, it's a manifest for your application. It also contains the icon, a link to your application's icon, the label, the theme. And then if you come over here, you see that we have the headlines activity declared here. Also, we have the main activity declared here. But if you compare both the headlines activity and the main activity, you will notice there is what we call the intent filter. And what this is basically saying, there are different kinds of intent filter, but this particular one here, android.intent.action.main, and the category.launcher, is basically telling Android that of all of the application's activities, this particular activity, which is main activity in this case, should be run first once the application launches. What we want to do is we want to have the headlines activity run first instead. So I'm just going to change this headlines activity and main activity. Okay, so let's see if that had any impact. Cool. You've noticed now we have our headlines activity display, and our RecyclerView now displays some of our data, even though it doesn't look like we would expect. So let's go ahead to check what the problem is. So back here in the Android Studio, let's try to locate the problem. If you we'll head over to headline item, which is the layout for a single item in the list. You notice the layout height is set to match parent, and the parent of this item is the recycler view, which is also matching the parent, the constraint layout. So what this means is that a single text view is occupying the whole space on the screen. So we want to set that to wrap content, which means it only occupies as much space as it needs. Also, I think I want to take out this text alignment. Let's add a padding of say 8 dp around the text. And that looks cool. So let's go ahead and reload our application and see what it looks like. Awesome. So this looks very nice, and as you see, we have our text and the list displayed serially. Okay, so that wraps up recycler view. As I mentioned earlier, we have a simple text view in our scenario here, but you can have more complex layout for a single item. You could have images or icons as well as several text views. Thanks for watching.